Hey buddy, here I am, and I want to make a video about text input. You see these things here? This is actually the sound game we've been talking about. I've been working on. This is a pretty, obviously pretty bad design right now, in terms of the styling. But I want to just get the functionality working and then work on the styling later. I do want to talk about these text inputs, and I actually had made a video earlier talking about them and building this text input here, but it was so slow and boring. I was so sleepy that I thought I would just make it again and make it about 30 minutes shorter. So here we go. We're going to just look at these text inputs, and you see here I've got a text input for guess color. And that text input takes in, I can guess a color. I can guess one of these colors here. And when it takes in that color, I click the submit button and the code does some stuff. And we'll see if I do here. I'll click the button and it takes in that green. It compares it to a color orange, and then it doesn't say I won. But if I now say orange, it says I win. So this is going to end up being like the point of the game, sort of like Among Us. This game's going to be called Sounding Among Us, and you have to figure out which sound is the sound of a disappearing larynx, or probably I'll change that to snare drum at some point. At any rate, we want to talk about these text inputs and how they work real quick. And rather than remake that chat one there, I'm just gonna make a new one here. And so you can see right now we've got two text inputs. Each one of them is actually a thing called a form, and that means it will be submitted. So if you want to make a simple one, and you can have a form that has multiple lines of inputs. So for instance, I can add some inputs to this one, and you'll see if I refresh the browser, it shows up, and you can't see it because it's underneath the, whatever, that's lame. So I got to move the canvas down, but we can do that by making the header be a little bit bigger. Header. Okay, anyway. But I think instead of adding, you know what I'll do is just not initialize the canvas for now. Let's turn this canvas off and refresh that browser, and we can see there's still a canvas. That's funny. Why is there a canvas? There's not supposed to be a canvas. Just take the sketch out of the sketch. So now there won't be a sketch anymore. And there's no need to draw a canvas. So there we go. Now we've got these two lines of colors. We've got a guess color and a guess color. Now the styling again is all off here, but each one of these inputs will be gathered now when I click that button. So you can make, a form that will have, we'll call this one name, that has multiple inputs. Forms generally, every input oftentimes will have a label, and usually we'll line that label up, and this one says for color. We'll call this for name, and that's the name of this label. The value is what's here in this box. And so those values get submitted when we click the button, the submit button. So that's the other type of input that most forms will have, is some kind of button that will fire a submit event. Now, in our JavaScript, we can listen for that submit event and then do stuff. Let's actually go to our submit event for this form and see that we're getting this name in as well. And this will be name input. And so we'll come in here to init.js and take a look at what I did to see that form in my JavaScript. In my JavaScript, all I have to do is just say color form equals document.querySelector with the ID of guess form. And that's the ID that's right here. And then I'm going to add an event listener for that submit message. So anytime that submit message is sent from this form, it'll call this process form function. And there we'll process the form. And you can see I'm console.logging these values. And let's actually console.log also E. Because E, or which is short for event, is what gets sent from the submit form into this function. And if I refresh my browser, and random is not defined, right? If I refresh my browser, look at these ridiculous stylings. If I refresh my browser and type in here, I'll say something like, hi there. And I'll type in here, green. Then I'm going to click submit, and we get this event. First, we're logging the submit event, and just ignore these error messages. Those are happening because I don't have P5 running right now. And that event has a target, which is the form guess form. And inside of event.target, there's multiple inputs. And so we can say e.target at 0.value, and we can also get e.target at 1.value. And I can submit that again, and we'll go down to the bottom and see am I getting high there anywhere? No. All right, maybe I need to refresh my browser, and I'll say Lime, and I'll say Chris. That's my name, and click event. And there we go. We get console is not defined. Silly me. Console.log. Save that. Refresh that. Maroon. Sam. And so now you see we get maroon, and we also get Sam. So that's how you get your data in, generally, broadly. Let's just do that real quick. I'm just going to write the whole thing real quick. I'm going to delete all these console logs, refresh my browser, and below these, I'm going to make a new form. And my new form is going to be here. I'm going to call it new form. Form with an ID of new form. And in there, I'm going to just skip this label. Now maybe we'll have a label. I'm going to bring all three of these things over. And we'll say, this is going to be a label for food. And this is going to be called food. And here we're going to enter your favorite food. And this can just stay the same. It's going to be a submit button of type submit with a value of submit. Now in my JavaScript, in order to get that text input into my JavaScript, all I need to do is come all the way down to the bottom, and I'll say, first I need to get the ID of the form, and so I'll say new form. Down here I'll say const food form, and maybe we'll change that to food form, just to be consistent. So we're looking for an ID of food form. We'll say const food form equals document dot query selector, and we'll give it ID food form. And where that came from. And then we'll say food form dot add event listener. We're going to listen for a submit, and we're going to call print food. I would just say log food, right? And you could do anything you wanted to with your data, but I'm just going to make a function called log food that's going to take in an event. And it's going, first I'm going to say e.prevent default. And what this does is it'll stop the browser from refreshing automatically. If the browser refreshes automatically, then I won't have any values to get from this. And the reason why the default behavior is for the browser to refresh is because oftentimes what we want to do is send this data to a server or something. And so we do want to refresh the browser. But in our case, we're doing something a little bit different. So we're going to run this function log food, and remember we're going to get e dot, let's see, and we'll say this is going to be food equals e dot target at 0 dot value. We're gonna get the first input's value. And we can console.log food. And if we had an array of foods, we could push that to that array and do stuff with it somewhere else. If we had let foods equals an array, and now we can push every time through. We'll log it and we'll push it, and then we'll also console.log foods, and so we can refresh the browser and enter your favorite food, and look at all this horrible styling here. Enter your favorite food, and my favorite food is chips, definitely. I'm going to submit, and you see we get chips and we get chips. I can add broccoli. Love broccoli. There we go. Now we've got chips and broccoli, and so on and so forth. So that's a text input. And there's another type of text input that's bigger. You may want to use it at some point. It's called a text area. And it's just basically one of these big text entry, a multi-line text input control area. And here you can see it in action. And so I hope that helps. You use those pretty much the same. Just have a text area inside of your form instead of that input. All right, hope that helps a little bit. And the next two videos are going to have this, are going to be using that text input to then send a message over sockets. All right.